The Untold Revelation, a shocking discovery about Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. The night was dark, and the sky over Medina sparkled with stars. Dr. Yusuf Rahmani, a renowned historian, sat in his dimly lit study, flipping through the pages of an ancient manuscript he had just received from a private collector. The manuscript was fragile, its pages yellowed with time. As he carefully translated the faded Arabic text, his heart began to race. His hands trembled as he realized what he had stumbled upon, a revelation so powerful that it could shake the modern world's understanding of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. Was it possible? Could history have overlooked such a crucial piece of information? He had to be sure. The next morning, he rushed to the Islamic Research Institute, where a team of scholars awaited him. With bated breath, they examined the text, cross-referencing it with existing historical records. What they found left them speechless. A journey through time. To understand the weight of this discovery, we must travel back to the year 570 CE, the year Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was born in Mecca. The world at that time was steeped in ignorance, tribal wars, injustice, and moral corruption ran rampant. However, from the very beginning, there was something extraordinary about this child. His mother, Amina, reported seeing a divine light when she gave birth to him, and a Christian monk, Bahira, had once predicted that the young Muhammad, PBUH, was destined for greatness. But what Dr. Yusuf found in the manuscript suggested something even more astonishing, a detailed prophecy about the coming of a man who would change the course of history, a prophecy written centuries before the prophet's birth. Could it be that certain civilizations had already predicted his arrival? If so, why had this knowledge been buried for so long? Unraveling the mystery. As Dr. Yusuf and his team dug deeper, they found references to an ancient Greek philosopher who had documented a vision of a leader from Arabia who would bring justice and unity to the world. Even more shocking was a newly uncovered Persian manuscript that spoke of a messenger of truth who would emerge from the deserts, rejecting idol worship and spreading a message of peace. The implications were staggering. For centuries, many Western historians had claimed that Islam spread through force and conquest. But here was evidence suggesting that people from different civilizations had already anticipated his arrival, viewing him as a beacon of hope rather than a threat. The turning point. The team decided to take their findings to the global stage. They presented the evidence at a major historical conference in London, attended by scholars of various religious backgrounds. As the presentation concluded, the hall fell silent. Then a well-respected historian from Oxford University stood up and said, "If this is true, we must rewrite parts of history. This is not just a discovery for Muslims. It is a discovery for humanity." The world's perception of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was about to change forever. What this means for us today. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was not just a leader for Muslims. He was a figure whose life and teachings impacted people across cultures and faiths. His message of justice, compassion, and equality is more relevant than ever in today's divided world. Dr. Yusuf's discovery reminds us that history is not just about the past. It shapes our present and future. The question now is, are we ready to embrace the truth and let it transform our understanding of the world? The shock waves of this revelation are only just beginning. Rocket, the child who would change the world. The old scholar adjusted his glasses, his fingers tracing the delicate Arabic script of the ancient manuscript. Dr. Yusuf Rahmani had spent years uncovering hidden aspects of history, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The manuscript he had discovered, which had already shaken the world, spoke of something even deeper, the remarkable early life of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. As he turned the pages, he found himself transported back to the year 570 CE, to the sacred city of Mecca, where a child was about to be born, one who would change the fate of humanity forever. A birth foretold. The night was quiet, but there was an unusual stillness in the air. Amina bint Wahb, a noblewoman of the Quraysh tribe, lay in her modest home, unaware that the birth of her son would be recorded in history for eternity. According to various accounts, a divine light illuminated the horizon when he was born, stretching as far as Syria. But there was sorrow in his birth as well. His father, Abdullah, had passed away even before he could hold his son. Amina's heart ached as she whispered his name, Muhammad, a name given to him by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, which meant the praised one. Little did they know how true those words would become. A childhood marked by trials. Since the beginning, Muhammad, PBUH, faced hardships that would have crushed any ordinary child. At the age of 6, tragedy struck again. His beloved mother, Amina, passed away while returning from a journey to Yathrib, Medina. Young Muhammad, PBUH, was now an orphan. He was taken in by his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, a powerful and respected leader of Mecca. But fate had more tests in store. Just 2 years later, Abdul Muttalib also passed away, leaving Muhammad, PBUH, in the care of his uncle, Abu Talib. Though Abu Talib was not wealthy, his love for his nephew was immeasurable. He protected him like his own son, and it was under his care that Muhammad, PBUH, began to truly understand the world around him. A boy unlike any other. Unlike the other children of Mecca, Muhammad, PBUH, was different. While others played in the bustling markets or engaged in childish mischief, he spent time in solitude, contemplating the stars, the desert, and the meaning of life. He refused to participate in idol worship, even though it was the core of Mecca's society. The Quraysh were known for their wealth and power, but their prosperity came at a cost. The weak were oppressed, women were treated unfairly, and tribal conflicts led to endless bloodshed. Even as a child, Muhammad, PBUH, could not ignore these injustices. He would later be known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy, and As-Sadiq, the truthful, titles given by the people of Mecca themselves. But not everyone was pleased with his righteousness. A fateful journey to Syria. At the age of 12, Abu Talib took Muhammad, PBUH, on a trading journey to Syria, an event that would prove to be one of the most significant moments of his early life. In the city of Basra, they met Bahira, a Christian monk known for his wisdom. As Bahira observed the young boy, he noticed something astonishing, a mark on his back, something he recognized from ancient scriptures. His face turned pale as he whispered, "This child is the last prophet." Abu Talib was stunned. Bahira urged him to protect Muhammad, PBUH, from harm, warning that some would try to stop his mission before it even began. The making of a leader. As Muhammad, PBUH, grew older, he worked as a shepherd, tending to sheep in the hills surrounding Mecca. Though it was a humble job, it was in these moments of solitude that he developed the patience, leadership, and wisdom that would later define him. By the age of 25, his reputation for honesty and fairness reached the ears of a wealthy businesswoman, Khadija bint Khuwailid. She entrusted him with her trade, and upon witnessing his character, she proposed marriage, an event that would mark the next chapter of his life. A destiny unfolds. As Dr. Yusuf read through the final lines of the manuscript, he realized something incredible. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had been tested from birth yet remained steadfast in his values. He was never just an ordinary man. He was being prepared for a divine mission. But if his early life was this extraordinary, what awaited him in the years to come? What challenges would he face as he stepped into his role as the messenger of God? The truth was about to be revealed, and the world would never be the same again. The night that changed everything. The desert wind howled through the valleys of Mecca, carrying whispers of something unseen, something extraordinary. It was the year 610 CE, and a man who had spent his life in truth and solitude now stood on the precipice of destiny. Muhammad, PBUH, now 40 years old, had always been different. He had spent years withdrawing from the corruption of Mecca, retreating to the cave of Hira, a small, quiet place nestled in the mountains. Here, under the endless sky, he would sit for hours, contemplating the world, the suffering of people, and the meaning of existence. But tonight was different. The first revelation, Wahi Ka Nazal. The cave was silent except for the steady beating of his heart. Suddenly, the air shifted. A presence filled the space, unlike anything he had ever felt before. A voice echoed through the cave, powerful, commanding, yet gentle. "Iqra." Read. Muhammad, PBUH, gasped. His chest tightened. He looked around, but there was no one. His hands trembled as the voice came again. Ikra. I cannot read, he stammered. Then, the presence became visible. A magnificent figure stood before him, Gabriel, the archangel. The angel enveloped him in a powerful embrace, his words filling Muhammad's, PBUH, very being. Read in the name of your Lord, who created. He created man from a clot of blood. Read. And your Lord is the most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. Surah Al-Alaq, 96:1-5. Muhammad PBUH gasped for air. His body trembled. He had never experienced anything like this before. Overwhelmed, he rushed out of the cave, stumbling over rocks in his desperation to leave. His mind swirled with fear and confusion. As he reached his home, his beloved wife, Khadija R.A., saw the terror in his eyes. She wrapped him in a cloak as he whispered, "Cover me, cover me." His body shivered as he recounted what had happened. Khadija R.A., a woman of wisdom, listened carefully. Instead of doubting him, she reassured him, "Allah will never disgrace you. You help the poor, support the weak, and always speak the truth." To seek clarity, she took him to her cousin, Waraka bin Nawfal, a Christian scholar. Waraka's face grew pale as he listened to the story. He took a deep breath and said, "This is the same angel that came to Musa. Yes. You, O Muhammad, are the prophet of this ummah. But beware, your people will reject you." The Meccan period and persecution. At first, Muhammad PBUH kept the revelations private, sharing them only with those closest to him. Khadija R.A., Abu Bakr R.A., Ali R.A., and Zayd R.A. were among the first to accept Islam. But soon, the command came, spread the message. Call people to one God. The Quraysh laughed at him. They mocked. Has he lost his mind? A man claiming to be a prophet. When Muhammad PBUH openly invited them to Islam at Mount Safa, his own uncle Abu Lahab stood up and cursed him, shouting, "May you perish. Is this why you gathered us?" The persecution began. Muslims were insulted, beaten, and tortured. Bilal R.A. was dragged through the streets, whipped, and left under the scorching sun with a heavy rock on his chest. Yet he only whispered, "Ahad, Ahad, God is one." Sumaya R.A. became the first martyr, brutally killed for refusing to renounce her faith. The Quraysh tried everything, bribes, threats, exile, but Muhammad PBUH and his followers refused to surrender. The plan to kill the Prophet PBUH and the Hydra. As Islam spread, the Quraysh grew desperate. They plotted to assassinate Muhammad PBUH in his sleep, selecting a warrior from each tribe to strike him simultaneously, so that no single tribe could be blamed. But Allah had a plan greater than theirs. On the fateful night, Ali R.A. slept in Muhammad's PBUH bed while the Prophet PBUH quietly slipped away. As the assassins waited outside, he walked right past them, reciting from the Quran. "And we have placed a barrier before them and a barrier behind them, so we have covered them, and they do not see." Surah Yasin 36:9. By the time the Quraysh realized what had happened, it was too late. Muhammad PBUH and Abu Bakr R.A. had fled to the cave of Thor, where they hid for 3 days. At one point, the Quraysh trackers stood just outside the cave's entrance. Abu Bakr R.A. whispered, "Ya Rasulallah, if they look down they will see us." Muhammad PBUH smiled and said, "O Abu Bakr, what do you think of 2, when Allah is their third?" Surah At-Tawbah 9:40. Miraculously, the Quraysh never entered the cave. A spider had spun a web over the entrance, and a pigeon had built its nest. Thinking no one could be inside, they left. After days of travel, Muhammad PBUH and Abu Bakr R.A. arrived in Medina, where they were welcomed with open arms. The Hijra wasn't just a migration, it was the beginning of a new era. Islam was no longer just an idea, it was now a movement. The Prophet PBUH would soon establish a just society, and the struggle that had begun in Mecca would lead to a revolution that would change the world forever. But the Quraysh were not done yet. They would come for him. They would bring war. And the battle for truth had only just begun. The legacy that changed the world. A cold breeze swept across the marble courtyard of Al-Masjid an-Nabawi in Medina. Dr. Yusuf Rahmani stood in front of the Green Dome, gazing at the spot where Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, rested. He had spent years uncovering forgotten truths, but tonight, as he listened to the soft echoes of the Adhan, a realization struck him. How did a single man, born in the deserts of Mecca, change the course of human history forever? He closed his eyes, and history unfolded before him. A message that conquers hearts, not lands. When Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, entered Medina after Hijrah, he didn't just establish a city. He built a civilization. The people of Medina, divided by years of tribal feuds, found themselves united under his leadership. For the first time, Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived under a constitution that granted equal rights to all, the famous Charter of Medina. But his mission was never just for Arabia. The world had known great empires, the Romans, the Persians, but their legacies were built on war, oppression, and conquest. Muhammad, PBUH, changed everything. His empire was built on justice. While other rulers crushed their enemies, he forgave his worst oppressors. When he re-entered Mecca after years of persecution, the Quraysh stood before him, terrified. He could have sought revenge. Instead, he spoke, "There is no blame upon you today. Go, for you are free." Mecca, the city that once rejected him, now embraced him. And from that moment, Islam began to spread across the world. The rise of a civilization. Within a few decades, Islam had reached Persia, Rome, Africa, and beyond. But it wasn't just armies that carried the message. It was knowledge, ethics, and justice. In Spain, Muslims established libraries, while Europe was in the Dark Ages. In Baghdad, scholars translated Greek, Persian, and Indian texts, preserving knowledge that would later fuel the Renaissance. In India, Muslim scholars introduced new advancements in medicine and mathematics. In Africa, trade routes carried not just goods, but ideas, ethics, and governance inspired by Islamic teachings. The West today credits the Magna Carta, 1215 CE, as the foundation of human rights, but 700 years earlier, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had already declared, "Scroll, all humans are equal like the teeth of a comb. No Arab is superior to a non-Arab, and no white is superior to a black, except in piety." A revolutionary impact on justice and human rights. Dr. Yusuf flipped through a book he carried, a study from Harvard Law School that ranked Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, as one of the greatest lawgivers of all time. He smiled. The world was finally catching up to a truth that had existed for over 1,400 years. Consider the impact. White heavy checkmark rights of women. At a time when newborn girls were buried alive, Islam declared, "Paradise lies under the feet of your mother." Women were given rights to inheritance, education, and divorce, centuries before the West. White heavy checkmark justice for all. While kings lived above the law, Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, declared, "Even if my own daughter Fatima were to steal, I would cut off her hand." The law applied to all, rich or poor. White heavy checkmark freedom of religion. While medieval Europe burned heretics, the Prophet, PBUH, signed treaties protecting Christian monks and Jewish tribes, allowing them to worship freely. The modern world still needs his teachings. Dr. Yusuf checked his phone. News flashed across the screen. War, corruption, racism, injustice. Even with all our advancements, the world still struggles with the same problems Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, solved 1,400 years ago. Imagine if his teachings were truly followed today. Small blue diamond, if world leaders ruled with justice, not greed, would poverty still exist? Small blue diamond, if races and nations saw each other as equals, would there be wars? Small blue diamond, if men and women respected each other's rights, would there be oppression? The modern world speaks of equality, human rights, and justice, but few realize that the blueprint for a perfect society already exists in the life of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH. The final thought. As the night deepened in Medina, Dr. Yusuf stood in silent reflection. He had spent years researching history, yet he knew, open book, the real legacy of Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, isn't just in books. It's in the millions of lives still transformed by his teachings today. The question remains, are we ready to embrace his message, not just in words, but in action? Because if we do, the world will once again witness a revolution, not of swords, but of justice, kindness, and truth. The discovery that shocked the world. The conference hall in Oxford University was packed. Scholars, historians, and journalists from around the world had gathered for a historic announcement. Dr. William Carter, a renowned Western historian and expert in ancient texts, adjusted his glasses as he approached the podium. His words would soon shake the academic world. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, the historical narrative we've known about Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, is incomplete. Recent discoveries, thanks to modern AI and historical data analysis, are unveiling something shocking. A murmur spread through the crowd. What could he mean? Dr. Carter clicked a button, and a massive screen behind him lit up. A series of newly uncovered ancient manuscripts appeared, some from the Vatican archives, others from undisclosed locations in the Middle East. These documents, he continued, contain first-hand accounts of Prophet Muhammad's, PBUH, life written by non-Muslims from his own era. The audience leaned forward in disbelief. A lost letter from the Byzantine Empire. One of the documents was particularly astonishing, a lost letter from a Byzantine envoy who had met Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, in Medina. This letter, written in Greek, described the Prophet, PBUH, in a way no one had seen before. Scroll, unlike other rulers, he wore simple clothes, sat with the poor, and treated slaves as his equals. When I observed him, I expected arrogance, yet found humility. I expected deception, yet found only truth. This man is unlike any other I have met. Dr. Carter paused. This letter was never made public before. For centuries, the world has been given a distorted view of Muhammad, PBUH. But history tells a different story. The Western narrative was collapsing before their eyes. AI unlocks hidden insights from the Quran. Another screen flashed. This time, it showed AI-driven textual analysis of the Quran. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, an expert in AI-assisted historical research, took the stage. For years, she said, critics claimed that the Quran was the work of a human mind. But AI has now revealed a pattern we didn't expect. She clicked again, and complex linguistic patterns appeared on the screen. What you're looking at, she continued, is a form of advanced mathematical structure in the Quranic verses, patterns so precise that even modern AI models struggle to replicate them. The room was silent. This, Dr. Mitchell concluded, suggests a level of literary precision beyond human capability. And remember, this was written 1,400 years ago, in a desert, by an unlettered man. People in the audience exchanged glances. Some skeptics, who had always dismissed Islam, now looked genuinely uneasy. Could it be that Muhammad, PBUH, was exactly who he claimed to be? What the Vatican never revealed. Then came the final bombshell revelation. Dr. Carter took the stage again. We've obtained access to restricted Vatican records, he said. These records contain reports from Christian monks and priests who had encounters with the Muslims in the 7th century. One account stood out, a report from a Nestorian Christian monk who met the Prophet, PBUH, in Syria before he received revelation. Scroll, I saw a young man unlike any other. His presence commanded respect, yet his humility softened hearts. He did not worship idols like the others. When he spoke, wisdom flowed from his tongue, as if he carried the light of an unseen knowledge. Dr. Carter exhaled deeply. This was written before Islam was even established. The monk saw something in him, something the world refused to see for centuries. The modern world is waking up. As the conference ended, journalists rushed to publish headlines. Loudspeaker New historical evidence suggests Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was misrepresented for centuries. Loudspeaker AI analysis of Quran-stunned scientists. Loudspeaker Vatican records reveal a hidden truth. Meanwhile, in homes across the world, people sat in front of their screens, watching the news unfold. A young researcher in New York, who had spent his life doubting religion, whispered to himself, Could I have been wrong all along? A woman in Paris, who had always been told Islam was oppressive, wiped away a tear as she read about the prophets, PBUH, justice, and mercy. A historian in Berlin, previously skeptical of religious figures, found himself rereading ancient manuscripts with a new perspective. The world was waking up. The truth that had been buried for over 1,000 years was finally emerging, and it was shocking everyone. History had been rewritten, but the real story had only just begun. The truth has been revealed. Now what? The world was still reeling from the shocking discoveries. The lost Byzantine letter, the Vatican records, and the AI-driven Quranic analysis had shaken the foundations of historical narratives. But what happens now? Dr. William Carter sat alone in his study, scrolling through the headlines. His career as a historian had been built on facts, research, and skepticism. Yet for the first time in his life, he felt something he had never expected, doubt about his own past beliefs. He had spent decades believing that Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, was just another historical figure, no different from the rulers and revolutionaries of ancient times. But the newly uncovered evidence painted a different picture. One a man who not only changed history, but did so with a message that was still shaping the modern world. His hands trembled as he closed his laptop. Had the world misunderstood Muhammad, PBUH, all along? A message more relevant than ever. Across the globe, the shockwaves of these discoveries had reached millions. Social media buzzed with debates, discussions, and reactions. Pushpin. If what these historians are saying is true, then why did we never hear about this before? Pushpin. How could an illiterate man from the desert create a text that AI struggles to comprehend even today? Pushpin. Why were these historical records hidden for so long? Even in academia, long-held biases were crumbling. University professors, journalists, and researchers began questioning their previous assumptions. One thing was clear, this wasn't just about history anymore. The discoveries had modern implications. If Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, had truly introduced a system of justice, equality, and human rights centuries ahead of its time, then why wasn't the world applying his teachings today? Imagine if we re-examined his legacy with an open mind. Small Blue Diamond, could his model of governance prevent modern corruption? Small Blue Diamond, could his teachings on racial equality heal today's divisions? Small Blue Diamond, could his approach to justice solve the inequalities of the legal system? The answers were out there, but was the world brave enough to seek them? The final question. Dr. Carter stared at an old manuscript on his desk. It was a translation of the Quran, one he had never seriously read before. But tonight, something felt different. He had spent years studying history, but now history was studying him. With a deep breath, he flipped open the pages and whispered, "What if? I've been blind to the truth all along." What about you? The world now has evidence that cannot be ignored. The real question is, what will you do with it? Will you dismiss it? Will you dig deeper? Will you question the narratives you've been told? The truth is out there. It always has been. The only question left is, are you ready to find it?